And welcome back to this fine sunny Tuesday and another episode of Crypt. Oh my God. And oh my God, is it a big day over in Congress in DC? Let's get right into it. Straight out of the gate, we have some bullish buying momentum coming into the ETF space. We can see some pretty positive numbers happening with Bitcoin, and honest to God, it's hard to tell where this buying is really coming from. Current wallet trackers have seen a trend of wallets with over $10 million worth of BTC being a lot of those who are unloading. However, that is starting to slow down, and realistically, $10 million, I mean, that doesn't super move the needle for a lot of these larger entities. So where are these coins coming from? Of course, Michael Saylor is coming out, continuing to buy and continuing to double down on his strategy play of Bitcoin accumulation. So while we are seeing the Bitcoin price trend down and there is some sort of large player selling hour by hour, it does look pretty positive in the long term to see the ETF appetite and all of the marketing and visibility that comes with ETF purchases. We've also got more people leaning into the BTC Treasury. Now, this one makes a lot of sense. Fold secures $250 million equity facility to expand its Bitcoin Treasury holdings. Now, Fold is sort of a rewards program for Bitcoin. They recently went public and they have a lot of opportunity to kind of, again, emulate Michael Saylor, right? They're raising an equity facility, meaning that they can issue shares, using that to buy and hold Bitcoin in the long term. What we are seeing is clear virality in this mechanism of the Bitcoin Reserve Treasury for public companies. And of course, the mass adoption curve just continues to grow. We can see the expansion happening in real time. Coinbase seeking US SEC approval to offer blockchain-based stocks. This obviously goes hand in hand with what Robinhood is building, where basically everything gets traded from a single app. And at the end of the day, we will likely want to see social elements put on top in the same exact vein that WeChat has massive success in China as the everything app, the super app, the Uber app that is not Uber. But these are all very positive in their trend towards mass adoption, towards the unification of investment, whether it be equities, commodities, cryptos, or sports betting, things like that. It's all siloing into one funnel where a user from a single app can really have exposure to any sort of financial asset class or product that they so desire. Of course, as this continues to move forward, we'll also likely see new financial apps like games, like alternative investment methods that really do begin to break the mold. If we remember, TikTok came out like 20 years after Facebook and is now the dominant player. So when we do redefine the paradigm upon which all of these assets sit, we will open ourselves up to more experimental niche and new and novel applications. That's something to look forward to, especially as these larger players set just an easier foundation for new builders to make these kind of apps. Now, what's going on today around 4 p.m. Eastern time is the congressional vote on the Genius bill. This is the stablecoin bill. It got really close to a successful vote in the past, narrowly missed. We've talked about sort of the back and the forth, but it is expected to pass today. And there is a lot of interest from players, whether they be on the financial side or on the social media application side, to say, hey, we see stablecoins as the next great thing. We are already seeing them impact the share value of credit card companies, knowing that this wave of frictionless money is about to hit. And of course, stablecoin issuers like Tether are proving to be some of the most profitable, especially per capita companies that have ever been made in all of existence. So that's pretty wild and interesting to see. Now, this goes up for the vote tonight. And what does it cover? Now, there's some really basic things around here, like who can issue these stablecoins. And to be clear, they need to come from very large issuers who are subjected to a lot of scrutiny and regulation. The bill basically lays out that anyone issuing a stablecoin needs to have their own reserves for this asset. So therefore, if people are going to give you $1 to issue $1, it needs to be siloed. I spoke about this yesterday, but that means it can also only be backed with either liquid dollars, short-term T-bills, repo agreements, but things that are essentially highly liquid vehicles that provide access to dollars. So if you want to rehypothecate, you can do so. You can't go long-term into T-bills. You have to do short-term. You have to be able to exit those yield-bearing positions for cash in the instance of a redemption. Now, a lot of this also goes on to talk about jurisdiction. They're setting up federal oversight, basically sticking with the Bank Services Act, which I would love to see go away, and the FinCEN, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. So that's all really straightforward to make sure that if you are issuing these assets, there is substantial oversight. It goes on to say say if you have over $50 billion of assets, you need a yearly audit. If you have under $10 billion of assets, you can be subject to state-by-state regulation, but those states need to have at least the minimal regulation matching what is on the federal level. Basically, it opens up a little bit of competition between states and how they want to approach it, but it sets the foundation for the federal level to really take control should shit ever hit the fan. Now, the stablecoins themselves, they need to be issued by these large orgs, and they could be subsidiaries of said orgs, like an insured deposit institution or a non-bank, which would be restricted to financial firms. This is really setting up the stack of who is going to be able to issue and mint these things, as well as who can put them into play inside their apps. And this is very pertinent because what would advancement be without FUD? And we have our constant naysayer, Elizabeth Warren, screaming to the hills, if Congress doesn't fix the Genius Act, billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos could launch stablecoins to track your purchases, exploit your data, and squeeze out competitors. The billions will come begging for a taxpayer bailout when it inevitably blows up. Now, it's a little bit curious as to what she's implying here. And she references this article from the Wall Street Journal that says Walmart and Amazon are exploring issuing their own stable coins. Corporate coins could take payments activity away from banks and the traditional finance system. Now, this is all a misconstrual, as she is wont to do. And the reality is that if we go back to the legislation itself, again, it does say that subsidiaries of insured deposit institutions or non-banks can be able to issue their own stable coin. So they would be under a broader issuer, somebody that is subjected to this larger regulatory regime. And it's really just a marketing political gimmick to say, hey, look, these billionaires are going to be in control of it. Even if Elon Musk on X or Jeff Bezos on Amazon or Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook want to issue their own stablecoin, they can do so. They just must be under the purview of one of these IDIs, these insured depository institutions. So at the top level, at the regulatory level, it is going to be much akin to banking. It's going to be these massive financial institutions that facilitate others to issue their own stablecoins. Now, in regards to coming for a taxpayer bailout when it inevitably blows up, I mean, that is what this regulation is specifically for. That's why if you take $1 to issue $1 of a stablecoin, it's either got to be in cash reserves, short-term treasuries, repos, things that, again, can be reclaimed for dollars very quickly. This is the fundamental purpose, is that taxpayers will not be on the hook should this blow up. And really, what's going to blow up? We're taking $1, we're digitally putting it on the internet. Is the dollar going to blow up? Like, that is the core feature of this asset issuance. Unlike other things where there's leverage involved, there's really no leverage here. There's not a thing to blow up. Now, he does talk about exploiting your data. That is entirely valid. Just because they're issuing their own stablecoin from an IDI doesn't mean that they don't have surveillance mechanics inside of them. Stablecoins in and of themselves are extremely transparent. But is this really going to be different than the credit cards tracking your spending history, collecting that 2 to 3% fee on every swipe? Is this really any different than the points and the rewards cards that are already issued by these same companies? So we just have the same kind of naysaying coming through again and again. But in reality, we need this to take the next step in building applications on top of blockchain. It's obvious and clear as day that stablecoins are sticking. And just look at Circle's publicly traded share price. I mean, it's so evident, starting out at $31, 2 weeks ago, and being at 144, and it was even up to 160 as of like last week. The appetite is voracious, and Circle doesn't even keep all of their revenue. Coinbase retains about 1/3 of Circle's entire revenue stream. It's nothing compared to Tether. It's minuscule, and Tether is actually taking the opposite path of launching its own blockchain for stables called Plasma. Plasma initially opened up for $250 million of public investment, increasing its way to $1 billion. So obviously the appetite's there, and we're going to see more people launch these stable coins. The reality is, though, unless you have the distribution, unless you're a social media company or a major distributor, then these stable coins probably aren't going to work for you. They do require distribution and sort of the whole point of sales and purchase thing in one kit and caboodle. So that being said, this is all extremely bullish for the industry. The greater the stable coin adoption, the more capital we have in the frictionless flow to other coins. We are seeing a revenue coin meta. People are actually starting to look at assets and value them in like a fair value way, like we would with stocks. I think this is very bullish. We're moving away from meme coins. And of course, regulations and the SEC are just setting us up to launch better, more robust companies that do return that revenue. So this is all very interesting, and it comes together for an extremely bullish narrative as to the global blockchain adoption in the near term, indefinitely in the long term. And that should keep you excited. So with that being said, stay safe out there, everyone. And as always, I will see you tomorrow.